All right, now as promised, this is part 2 where I'm going to show you how to make sci-fi textures and materials that are procedural, powerful, flexible, and a lot of fun to play with. You can create something that really matches your style and need. So this is a ship that I made from a random ship creation website in my part 1 video. Go watch that if you want to learn about that and how to basically turning a messy kit bash file into an organized set of pieces to use. So let's make a flat plane and we're going to apply the texture to the ship as well as this flat plane. So we can really just see what's going on. I'm going to rotate this. There we go. I'm also going to go to material view so things are a little bit faster. They're going to split our view down like that. We're going to put our shader editor on top. Let's make a new material called ship hole 1. Okay, we can make variations of 2, 3, 4, whatever, but we're going to start with number 1 first. And I want to make sure this material is on the ship as well, which it is not. Looks like it had some kind of default material. Me ship. Let's put it as ship hole 1. Here's a cool trick. If you have a lot of objects, you want to have the same material. Instead of going through each one, just multi-select them all. Select the one that does have the correct material, and then press Control L and go down to link materials. Now they all have that same material as the first active object that I had selected. Awesome. Saved me a lot of time there. Okay, so in our shader editor, we're going to make a number of hierarchical node groups that will add different levels of detail. Now, as this video progresses, it will get more and more complex, more and more layers. So I advise you take your time with this video. If you get lost, rewind, pause this every time you need to, build your nodes, and then come back and press play, because you're going to learn some really cool tricks that I've been building and learning for almost 10 years now. So let's press N to get rid of our side view. Now I am in Blender 4.0.2, so the BSDF looks a little smaller than 3.9. It's a little different, but it works the same way. So let's turn our metallic up and let's turn our roughness down. Okay, now we have almost a chrome, diffuse chrome material, and we're going to build essentially the panels generating node group first, and then we'll add some other things to add variety and realness to the surface of the spaceship. So we're going to be using a lot of Voronoi. Voronoi is a really cool noise texture generating node. It generates a lot of organized types of noise. So next, let's create a color ramp. Let's put the fall off to constant and put our white somewhere in the middle. Okay, so the colors of this noise is going to go directly from black, and once it crosses that mid threshold, it's going to pop right into white. Let's plug this into our color input to see what the heck is going on here. We got polka dots. Oh my gosh. Let's change our noise type to Chebychev. This is a great one because it makes squares. Now, as we play with our threshold, let me get a bit better view here for you. As we play with our threshold or our cutoff, we can see we can get kind of little cracks and lines or little squares and dots. Very useful for a lot of different types of stuff. We also have our random slider. If we put random down to 0, we have a grid, right? Now we can't see it on the square because the square happens to be in the middle of these cells. But with this 3-dimensional object here, the ship, we can really see this grid of what is 3D cubes, because the noise is 3D and it is generating these cubes in kind of this texture space, all right? We also have Manhattan, which gives us the diamond patterns. But let's go back to Chebychev. And inside of here, we also have some other options such as F1 and F2. F2 has a little bit more detail. So once we start introducing roughness and detail and randomize, we'll get some really great results. Like this is already pretty cool. So what we're going to do is let's keep it at F1 for now. Keep it simple. We're going to make large black squares, and then we're going to layer this with 2 or 3 other layers, and each of them is going to have a different scale, right? Because we can control the overall scale of the noise, and we're going to add a lot of variety that way. So let's start with the big chunks. Let's go with number 4 for now, and let's select these 2 nodes, Shift D, and move them down here diagonal. I like to do the diagonal cascading because that just helps me visually know, like, hey, this is the first layer, second layer, third layer. Now to mix them, Shift A, click on search, and type in mix, go to mix color, drop it right here, leave your factor or your crossfader at 50%, and now you can layer noise 1 and noise 2. Let's go to noise 2 and give it a different scale. Let's use the good old computer multiplication thing and do 8 instead of 4. And then down here, let's make this one 16. So we've just layered noise 1 and noise 2, which we can actually crossfade from all 1 or all 2 or halfway in the middle. That's what we want. And now Shift D that. We're going to make a third layer of noise 3, which is now 50% on top of noise 1 and 2. Awesome. Now, these are all just layered with transparency, but we do have some really cool options in here, such as screen and multiply, which will basically just carry over the dark pixels or the white pixels. There's also overlay. So there's just different ways of mixing these values that we're getting from these 3 different noise nodes. But I'm going to keep things simple for now and just keep it at mix and 50% for all of them. We also still do have the threshold control. So if you feel like one of these noises is just too much, we can change that. We can, make it more black or more white. So I'm going to make this small one, the one that's at scale 16 or noise 3, as I've been calling it, a little bit more cut off with a threshold. And now we've got noise 2, which is at size 8. Let's see what this is doing. Yeah, that one's kind of cool. I'll leave that right around the middle. And noise 1 is the big squares. Cool. So if you want something darker or brighter, you can modify it that way. We do have F2. Let's see what that does. Should give us a little bit more detail. Okay, so this is all of them at F2. I feel like it's almost like the army pixel camouflage. So if you like that for maybe for like a megastructure or a large ship hull, then, more power to you. But I'm going to go put everything back to F1. All right, now so far, this is super basic and not convincing or realistic because everything is going where? Into the color input. But we have so many more things to plug things into to make them look realistic. We got metallic, we've got roughness, we've got an emissions hiding in here in the emissions thing, and we have a bump node, which we can do some really cool details with as well. Let's do that first. So let's do Shift A, type in bump. Now bump map will basically take black and white values and simulate geometry, or rather it's simulating like surface detail. Now see, we have this like these ridges, these bumps, and they're totally fake. We have not added any geometry. There isn't actually any shape to them, but it looks like there's shape from far away, especially when the light glances off them at certain angles. It gives a great illusion of depth. So that's one subtle level of realism you can add. Now let's do the big one, which is roughness. So let's plug in our color data into roughness, and let's actually unplug the color just so we can see that everything we're seeing right now is as a result of roughness. So what's going on here? Well, remember how we had some black, some gray, and some white? Well, black is a value of 0. So when we plug that into roughness, a roughness of the black areas is 0, which means completely reflective and like a mirror, okay? The whites are going to be completely opaque or 100% rough. So there isn't no reflection. So there is no reflection in the white squares. If there's anything in the middle, such as a gray or, anywhere in the grayscale, those are going to be different values of reflectivity to rough. We see some of these are a little bit more shiny than the others, and that's just because of their value. So if I play with these faders here, I can kind of adjust like how much opaque ones there are versus how many reflective ones there are. And essentially all I'm doing is making it darker, more reflective, or whiter, less reflective. We can also change our black in these color amps to be not black, which will be less reflective. So if I go to my noise 1, click on my black little control there and make it a gray, look at that. We already see instead of 0 roughness, now it's like, 0.4, 0.5 roughness. So we have a lot of control over the values because of this color ramp. There's noise number 2. We have some of that. Noise number 3. And you can do the same thing with the white. You can make the white less white or more gray, darker, which will be more reflective, right? Cool. Now this is looking a little bit less distracting. It's still a very shiny, clean ship hull, which if you're in the Star Wars universe, that's like heresy. But if you're Star Trek, it's okay because, they clean their ships in the Star Trek universe. Star Wars, there's no such thing as cleaning your spaceship. Now, if we want to make this look a little bit more real, we want things to be subtle. We don't want things to be so in your face like this. This is not like industry standard or, realistic looking to me. I'm going to make another mixed color node and put it right here in front of the roughness chain of signal. And this will allow me to crossfade between all the noises we've just been playing with. Let's put it into B and a flat color, which is a value. Remember, value is control over roughness. So if I put my factor to 0, it's all this A color. A, which is completely black, which is value 0, is going into our roughness. And there is complete no roughness. It's all a mirror. But if I put my A to pure white, which is value of 1, now it's completely like diffuse, non-reflective. So I'm going to set what I want my ship to be at. Let's say maybe around here. I don't want it to be like a piece of chrome flying through space, but I don't want it to be, plastic. So I'm going to put it somewhere in here because I do want some of that metal shading effect
Around 0.3, 0.4 is nice. But I want to also introduce some of those irregularities from our square noise, our three noises. So to do that, we can just fade this in a little bit. So it's not completely in your face, but there is some variety. And as the lights of your sun and your other things glance off of these surfaces, you get a really nice realistic effect. You can also use multiply, which will only darken things. So as we fade it in, only the dark parts are changing our A color. Or you can use screen, which will only brighten. So only the brighter pixels of our noises will now brighten and interrupt our A color that we set. So I think of A as like my starting level of roughness, and then we're layering on top all the noises through this B input. That's kind of cool. I like that. It is sort of flat, a little bit flatter than I usually make stuff, but I'm liking it so far. Now our color has nothing plugged into it, right? So we could actually just set like a solid color. We could give our spaceship a color, right? Or just a value of gray. If we like dark ships or bright ships, we can do that. So I'm going to do a similar thing that I did with this roughness, but with the color. So I'm going to do a starting color, which, well, I don't know, I'll start it at red. And then B will be the noises. And we're going to layer on top of our color the noises. Let's plug that into color. So with factor at 0, we have our solid color. Factor at 1, we have layered on top the noises using screen method, which, like I said earlier, only fades in the bright pixels. We can do the opposite. We can only fade in the black pixels and darken our orange. That's pretty sweet. Alternatively, we could actually bypass this and use a color ramp node in the middle of our noises, right? Our square noises, and we can set a whole bunch of random colors to basically colorize those squares. So watch this. I set my color ramp to constant, which we saw earlier does that. But what if I make colors on these things? Let's do like a beige. Let's do a medium red and then black. Cool. So now our noises, which you know were like black, gray, and white squares, are all going through this constant color ramp directly into our color input. And we can change the sensitivity. So we can make more of the yellow squares or less, more of the red squares or less. And yeah, control the look that way. Maybe add some complementary colors. There we go. Interesting, very interesting. That looks pretty neat to me. But I'm going to get rid of the yellow, actually. I like the blue complementary in there. Just a few little blue squares to offset things. Now, I love what the bump is doing. The bump is really bringing this to life and giving it that thickness on the surface of like panels and pieces meeting. So it's really subconscious what the bump does, but without it, it's so flat. Watch, I'll turn the bump off, put my bump node strength to 0, and it's just, I don't know, it's just not the same. So with it, without it. And in case you are a little confused why the squares back here, it's just for reference. So we can see at a flat view what the texture is looking like. And over here, of course, we have it applied to our ship. And my grid is driving me crazy. Why have I not turned that off already? Turn off floor. Oh, that's better. I don't even need a grid. I do want the overlays on, but not my X and Y. There we go. Just nice floating gray space. Could even make that black. Now, all we've done is made very techno-styled noises with these three Voronoi textures, right? Which are very squarey and very blocky, which is fine for what we're doing. Good for techno stuff and sci-fi panels. Let's get rid of this old color node there. All right. But what about dirt and grime and adding more surface imperfections to bring this to life even more? Well, now we're going to use the other noise groups. So before we do that, let's grab these and let's make this a node group. So Control G. And now we're into this other world of the node group editing. So we are not in the previous shader. We're in node group. You can see right here, node group, which is inside of ship hole 1 material. If I click this up button, it'll take us back here. And this is the node group we just made right here. If I click on this little icon or tab, it'll bring me into here. So we've got everything we just made kind of inside of a shell is essentially how I think of it. And we don't need all these multiple results. So let's go to in for a side panel group and let's delete these results. There we go. And we can actually plug in controls to here. So let's do scale 1, scale 2, and scale 3. And we've got our faders here. So this is fader between noise 1 and 2. And this is the fader for 3. Cool. So what are we doing here? If I tab out and go back to our normal material of spaceship hull, we now have all these controls on the outside of the node group, which is really cool. So we can, we got to replug this in. We kind of screwed it up. into B, and into the ramp there. Nice. Okay, we're back to normal. Here we are. But look right here, we've got these controls. We've got scale, scale 2, scale 3, the crossfades here, and crossfade there. Great. This also simplifies our setup. Look how much cleaner it is. We have 4 nodes right here, essentially. But within here, there's like, I don't know, a lot. So that's a nice way to clean up your setup. We can also name things. So in our node group over here, let's name this panel generator. Oh, we need to actually do the label. There we go. We can even give it a color if that helps you, organize things later. Darker colors are easier on the text, so there we go. And now let's introduce some actual procedural noise that looks more like dirt and even scratches. All right, so let's do Shift-A, Musgrave, and Shift-A, Noise Texture. So we're going to have these 2 noise groups, and we're going to introduce them into roughness and then color. So first, let's add this into the roughness chain, as I say, because it starts here and ends here, right? It goes from left to right. And we always have, this is our starting roughness. We can even name this node starting roughness, right? Which is A. And then we're going to add one after this. So Shift-A, mix color. We're going to add Musgrave on top of what we just did for our roughness chain. And look at that. We have this weird like burn look, which is kind of cool. What's happening is the black and white values of this noise, this Musgrave noise, are being mixed 50% on top of the panels. So if I put 0, mix factor to 0, this is just the panel generator we have. And then 100%, it's all Musgrave. So it's a crossfading between, one, both, or the other. And by the way, I Shift Control clicked this node to preview it. You can see it's kind of shortcutting right to the output. I can shift control any node and it'll give me a direct preview what that looks like. That's using the Node Wrangler add-on, which is by default enabled, or should be, in Blender. If we want to go back to our normal view, Control Shift click the BSDF right there, and now we're back to the full shader view. Okay, so we're going to mix in this Musgrave, but I want to give some more detail to this Musgrave because it's super blah and blobby. So put our detail all the way up to 16 and slowly lower our dimension by holding Shift while you click and drag. There we go. Beautiful, grimy. Yeah, look at that. You can really see it. Those reflections are being disrupted by the noise pattern. And that's, of course, based on how much we have this faded in or out. So we faded out, just faded in just a little bit, like 0.1. It's still there. That looks great, right? It looks very realistic because it's not too much, it's not too little. Now we always have the options of doing multiply versus screen. So multiply will only add the dark pixels, which means darker is more reflective. All right, so it's going to chip away and make it more reflective. Or if we use screen, it's going to kind of cake on top more and more noise, making it less reflective because it's only adding the white pixels. So we can also do overlay, which sort of darkens and brightens it based on white and black pixels. So that'll kind of go up and down versus within the roughness chain. But I'm going to keep it at multiply and just add a little bit. Nice. I like that. Dirty, grimy surface. All right. And it is, of course, over here on this ship as well. Yeah, cool. So nothing is perfect and clean. We can now add some scratches into the bump node chain right here. We have a bump from our panels. Let's use noise texture. Noise texture is very gray, so we're going to add some contrast with a color ramp. I'm going to Control Shift click this and make it very contrasty. Okay. Let's turn up our detail, turn up our roughness, and I only want a few spots of black, just a few, because those are going to be our scratches and damage. So maybe we put our scale down. Yeah, like that. Okay. I'm going to make my white color actually not white, but 50% or 0.5 gray, because we're going to layer this into the bump node. So Shift A, mix color, put in that height chain for the bump, and then plug in this guy into B. Let's go back to our normal preview. There you go, BSDF. So what are we doing? We got noise texture, which is being crunched like big time by this color ramp. Then it's coming into a mixed color, which is layering on top of what? Our panels, that blue thing. So our bump now, oh, look, there's a little spot right there. This is purely from the bump. So I put this back to 0. It's the only thing that's causing bump is the panel lines. But as we slowly introduce that noise texture, look at that. We get the damage. Yeah, cool. And it's only going inwards on the bump because bump does have an up and a down. White is up, black is down. 50% gray is neutral. Nothing will happen with 50% gray values. So the ceiling of our noise scratch is in the middle of our bump, right? 50%. And then the black goes downwards. So it's kind of cutting into our ship. Let's find some other areas of damage. There's some there. You can see it. Especially when the light goes over it, you get those kind of simulated shapes, right? That's cool. Now we have total control over this noise. We've got scale. We've got how rough it is. If it's kind of soft and like, you know, like just erosion, or if it's like acid or cosmic rays, I don't know. More fine detail. We can also kind of make it like bendy and wobbly if we turn up our distortion. Like that. Sort of add some nice like dragging scratchiness to it, which looks pretty great. Let's check out our ship, see how messed up it looks. Oh yeah, lots of draggy scratches. Someone is not flying very well or has made a lot of enemies. Let's turn the distortion down to just 1. So there's some stretchiness to the scratches, but not like crazy. Maybe dot 2. We can preview it by Control-Shift clicking it. Yep, that's where our scratches are. And there. All right. Now let's add some other textures here, such as our cockpit glass. Just going to select these shapes right here. Dun, dun, dun. Materials, make a new material. I'm going to call it cockpit glass. Make it black. Put the roughness down very low so it's actually shiny, and click assign. There we go. Now we have a shiny glass cockpit right there. I think I had some other windows too. They were inset here. And there we go. Yeah, that's cool. Now it's a good idea to not have your ship have the entire same material across the whole thing. Some materials work like that. You know, like if you look at the Millennium Falcon, it's kind of the same white metal, right? With a lot of details to make up for what's not in the material. The material mostly on the Millennium Falcon and similar ships is just a bunch of grime and dirt and a few small details here and there. But the modeling is what makes it up for it. But for here, we're kind of doing the opposite. We're sort of faking a detailed ship with just a detailed material, whereas the ship itself is not super detailed, right? They don't have a bunch of holes and pipes and handles and access stuff. It's just blocks. But the material is faking it. Let's go to rendered view and see what this is looking like. Make our light a little brighter, maybe 32. Move our light around with RR. If you select your light and then press RR, you can rotate it freely in 3D space. I'm adding a second light. Try to get some underlighting here. Cool. I'm going to make this one softer by increasing my angle. Looks pretty sweet. Let's add some ambient occlusion to add a little bit more darkness in the crevices, which makes things more interesting and realistic. Very simple. I'm just going to grab this multiply mix node. Actually, it does need to be multiply. So if you make a mixed color, make sure it's on multiply. Turn your factor all the way up. Shift A, search, and type in AMB for ambient occlusion. Drag your color down into input B. And there we go. We may want to add a little bit of contrast to make it more obvious. So Shift A, ramp, color ramp right there. And just bring your blacks up a little bit above halfway. So what is ambient occlusion? It's this. These lines are caused by intersecting, but nearby faces. So I think of them as crevices, right? These are crevices and there's a little bit more shading. We can actually increase the distance to maybe 2 or 3 to add some more shadows in those crevices. Now this is not edge detecting because obviously some of these edges are not black, but this is more crevice detection. Let's try maybe 6. There we go. That's pretty cool. And now it's being overlaid on top of all the color data, right? The random color chunks, black, red, and blue. And multiply, we're only adding the black pixels, which is the crevice shadows, and it's mixing them on top into the BSDF color. So let's do without it, with it. I like it. It adds just a little bit of oomph. All right, I feel like my scratches are a little bit much on my ship, a little distracting. So let's decrease the color ramp to make a little bit less. Yeah, there we go. Kind of going down that threshold, making less of the scratches. We can introduce the noise also into the color data, because currently the color chain, right, going into our color input, base color, doesn't have any procedural noise as far as dirt is concerned, but it only has the panel noise. But it is procedural noise, but it's not like the dirt and grime from Musgrave. So we can copy some of this and bring it into our color data. Let's copy another multiply, get our Musgrave and plug it in there. Remember, a Musgrave is being used for the surface imperfection, where everything is not a perfectly slick and shiny surface. So let's see what this is doing as we introduce this new mix node, which is layering on top some Musgrave noise. Oh yeah. Adding some black to the color of the surface. Cool. So it's not all just a solid red or black, or blue. See, we got some Musgrave on top of the blue as well. You can see it right there. You can also introduce some of the scratch noise. Before we do that, I'm going to make another color ramp for this scratch noise and make the white completely white, because we don't want to layer gray on top of everything, or it'll basically just darken everything. So I'm going to plug this into this new multiply here. Now, this black and white data coming in here is from the scratches, which is a noise texture, and it should add some blackness in the crevices of the scratches. Let's find a good scratchy area. Man, I'm not really seeing it too much. Let's maybe play with our threshold of the new color ramp. Yeah, see, if we do that, we can see it basically expanding outwards from the scratch zones to covering the whole ship. So we just want to go just a little bit outside the scratchy area, which gives it like a nice burn look. Cool, adding a little bit of black there in and around the scratch spots. Let's see if adding a bevel modifier will help with this ship, because it's very sharp, very angular. Shift A, bevel. Yeah, it helps a little bit. And our bevel, let's turn off clamp overlay. That way we can really slowly bring up the radius of these beveled edges. Put maybe 3 segments there. Yeah, that helps. See these edges? They're no longer just like hard. You need to do the same with the other objects too, though. So this one, let's do the front one. It's a lot more visible. Generate bevel. 3 segments, turn off clamp overlay, and very carefully, holding shift, controlling how large we want the bevel to be. You can see a lot better in object mode. See those soft edges? All right, I'm feeling those black spots are just a little heavy, so I'm going to make this black, not black. I'm going to make it maybe a variation of red, like a gray, neutral red, kind of brown. Let's see. Yeah, that's cool. And there's a lot of noise going on. Is that my Musgrave? Yeah, it is. Just make it a little bit more subtle. If you want to add some engine glow on the back, it's real easy. Let's go to object mode so we can see where the shapes are that we want to make glow. And I'm going to use circle select to just grab all of those. Oh, and these. And I'm actually going to inset them like this. There you go, using E. All right, now with these faces still selected, make a new material, give it a name. You gotta be good so later it's not a big mess. Click assign, and then let's change this to emission by just pressing E. It goes right to the emission option in this long, confusing menu. Let's give it a color. Of course, it's gotta be bright blue. And let's do like 100 strength. So we go to rendered view. There we go. And all 4 of them, yep, they copy each other. Let's also add some glow in here. Maybe like another engine. Add a material slot, plug it into the engine glow, and yeah, sweet. There we go. What I did there was I just played with my crossfade right here in my node group. So there's a lot less of black, right? It looks cool, but it just doesn't look like a ship to me realistically. So I just turned it down a bit. There we go. And then, yeah, somewhere in there. Nice. Here's another way to add some more design and customization to your ship as far as color and design goes. So let's make yet another mixed color node. Set this one to, let's go to overlay actually, and we're going to use an image texture. So I know this has been all procedural noises thus far, but we're going to introduce some images. So let's go to open, and I'm going to find a pattern related image that I have. This is my folder of stock photos. This could be cool right here, or maybe this one. Let's try this red one first. And we're going to basically overlay an image on top of everything. So bring your color of your image into B. And there we go. So we have, using overlay, we're overlaying that arrow on top of our entire ship. Now we're getting into areas of UV unwrapping and whatnot. So let's select our image and press Control T, which gives us, sorry if I'm not zoomed in close enough, gives us our UV coordinates here. We're using UV. We can unwrap this in any way we want. So let's go maybe split our screen to the unwrapping, or sorry, the UV editor. And we're just doing the engine piece. So tab and edit mode, select all. And that's how it's unwrapped, terribly. Let's do cube projection. That's pretty cool. Let's go to material mode. It'll be a little bit easier to see what's happening here. There we go. I'm just going to solo this piece. Nice. We can, of course, move any of these around to shift it up or down. You know, we can align, we can maybe rotate 90 degrees. I actually like the arrow pointing forward. That looks pretty cool. Yeah, I like that. Pretty sweet. Now the rest of the ship is also using this image, so we can, you know, unwrap this one, maybe say cube unwrap again, show our image. There we go. If you're having trouble seeing what's going on, you can just turn off your overlays so that you can just move stuff around and have fun. Let's rotate this 90 degrees. Put it right on the axis of this arrow. Yeah, cool. Some's black, some's red. Nice angles, I like that. Let's see if we rotate this 180, R180, make the arrow pointing forwards. I want to add some glow in this vent thing, so watch this cool trick. If I go to edit mode and select one of these faces, and then press Shift G, which is our select similar menu, and do perimeter, it grabs all these inside vents with nothing else, right? Yeah, nothing else, just the vent inside pieces for me. I love that. Make a new material slot, plug in our engine glow, and assign. Now we have that. Maybe that's a reverse thrust, right? To slow it down when it's approaching something, or it's connected to the engine with that big pipe. I don't know. I just like that to have some glowing and some heat exhaust, maybe like red or orange on the front. And yeah, I'm really loving this. That texture just really brought something else to the game. We can make that texture a little bit more imperfect. I'll just show it over here. It'll be a little easier by using noise. So we're going to bring this back down, select an object. So here is the image right here, right? Let's add an overlay on that and then a Musgrave texture to plug into B. So we are now using overlay method of layering to basically bring in some noise on top of the image texture. Let's make it a lot finer with detail and low dimension. There we go. Let's actually move this Musgrave, instead of being in B, let's put it as the factor. So now Musgrave is controlling the mix of, you know, 0 to 1 and everything in between. And we can pick a color here to basically scatter in. So I'm going to do like a rich red. There we go. Cool. And if we want to control the noise and how it's masking between the image versus this solid red color, we can just do like, put it on mix. And now we can control the brightness of the noise. So it's mixing in red. Let's flip-flop this. Drag that color there, plug in the image on the bottom. Okay, so if we hold shift and control that brightness, we can do that. Maybe make our scale down a little bit lower. Yeah, that's cool. So now our little image overlay is not so perfect and pretty. It's kind of messy. Now we control how much of that red like kind of comes through, right? The dark paint. We could make it any color. We could make it like white or blue, whatever. Sweet. I think I'm done with the tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed this and learned some cool tricks. There is so many more levels of complexity we could add. You know, I have everything on still F1, right? For the little panel generator. I didn't even touch roughness or detail. I didn't do multiple values in here, which you totally can with your ramps. There's just so much more you can do to add some really cool style in here. I'm trying to keep my videos shorter so that they're more digestible and simple. And you guys can say, hey, I could improve this thing on top of what Daniel taught me. I can take this to the next level Yes, do that. That's a great way to learn, is playing and tinkering with stuff. But if you have any questions, ask in the comments down below. Be sure to check out my awesome asset store on Blender Marketplace. I have so many cool kit bashes for spaceships, so many cool procedural textures for sci-fi stuff on there. I think you'd love it. If you love this video, you'll love my assets that I sell, and they're very affordable and cheap. Lastly, check out my Blender playlist here on my YouTube. You'll see tons of really great tutorials for a variety of techniques. Thanks for watching. Have a great week.